Alarms scream through my cockpit and I do not have time to think. Red lights flash across every panel. My hands move faster than my mind can follow, pulling the stick hard to the left as a wall of enemy fire tears past my canopy. My name is Ryan Colt, and in this moment, I am absolutely certain I am about to die. The battle above the colony world of Halden's Reach has turned into a slaughter. 20 minutes ago, our fleet held the line. Now half of it is gone, swallowed by explosions that bloom silently in the vacuum of space, beautiful and terrible at the same time. My squadron is down to 3 ships. Then 2. Then, as I watch a friend's fighter vanish in a flash of white light, it is just me. My comm crackles. Command's voice is tight, controlled, but I can hear the fear underneath it. All remaining pilots, fall back to the jump point. Repeat, fall back immediately. I want to obey. Every instinct in my body wants to turn my ship around and run. But through my forward viewport I can see it. The enemy mothership, massive and dark, gliding toward the last transport carrying the colony's evacuees. Thousands of people. Children, families. If that ship reaches the transport before it jumps to safety, none of them will survive. I do not think about my own life. There is no time for that kind of thinking. This is Colt, I say into the comm, my voice steadier than I expect. I'm not falling back. Colt, negative. You will not survive contact with that vessel. I cut the channel. My ship is small, fast, built for speed, not for standing against something the size of a small moon. But speed is exactly what I need. I push the throttle forward until the engine groans in protest, and the stars smear into streaks of light around me. The enemy mothership grows larger in my viewport with every passing second, its hull glowing faintly with strange symbols I cannot read, symbols that seem to pulse like a heartbeat. I think of my mother, back on Earth, standing on our porch the day I left for training. I think of the letter I never finished writing to her. I think of how strange it is that in the final moments of a life, the mind does not go to grand or heroic thoughts. It goes to small, quiet ones. A porch, a letter, a voice saying goodbye. The mothership's defense turrets swing toward me, tracking my approach. Bright beams of energy lance out, and I twist my ship through them, weaving a path that should not be possible, that my instructors always told me was impossible. Somehow, I hold on. Somehow, I keep moving forward. 300 meters from the hull, I make my choice. I do not fire my remaining torpedoes at the ship's shields. I aim instead for a narrow seam near the base of one of its main weapon arrays, a weak point my scanners picked up in the chaos of battle. If I hit it just right, the resulting explosion should cripple the ship's ability to fire, buying the transport enough time to escape. If I hit it wrong, I will simply die for nothing. I fire everything I have left. The torpedoes streak away from my ship, trailing thin lines of light. For one endless second, nothing happens. Then the seam ignites, a bright, violent bloom of fire and energy that spreads faster than I expect, faster than I am ready for. The shock wave hits my ship before I can pull away. My cockpit fills with sparks. Alarms shriek, then die, one after another, as system after system fails around me. I feel my ship spin, tumbling end over end, and for a moment I see the transport in the distance, its engines flaring bright as it begins its jump to safety. It worked. The thought brings me a strange, quiet peace, even as my vision begins to darken at the edges. The people on that transport will live. The children will grow up. Somewhere far away, they will never know my name, never know what happened here, and that is fine. That is more than fine. My ship's hull groans, metal twisting under pressure it was never built to survive. I feel heat, then cold, then nothing at all. The stars outside my shattered viewport blur into streaks, then into darkness, and I understand, with a strange and distant certainty, that I am dying. There is no pain in this final moment, only a heavy sinking weight, like sinking slowly into warm water. My thoughts scatter, fragments of memory rising and falling like bubbles. My mother's laugh, the smell of rain on Earth. The first time I flew a ship on my own, terrified and thrilled all at once. the faces of my squadron, gone now, waiting for me somewhere beyond this dying body. I think, with something close to acceptance, that this is how it ends, not with glory, not with speeches, just a quiet fading, alone in the dark, far from home. I'm sorry, I whisper to no one, to my mother, to the letter I never finished. I did what I could. The darkness swallows me completely. I do not know how long I drift in that darkness. Time does not exist there, not in any way I can measure. There is only a vast, silent nothing, and within it, a strange awareness that I am still, somehow, something, not alive, not exactly gone, suspended between two states, like a held breath that never releases. Sometimes, in that darkness, I think I hear voices, distant, muffled, speaking in tones I do not recognize. Sometimes I think I feel movement, as though I am being carried, though I have no body to carry, no weight to lift. I wonder, in the strange logic of that place, if this is what the old stories meant when they spoke of souls passing between worlds. I wonder if my mother will be there, waiting, when I finally arrive wherever it is I am going. I think about the battle. I replay it over and over, the way you replay a song stuck in your head. The scream of alarms, the mothership growing larger, the choice I made, the choice that felt so certain in the moment and now feels like it belongs to someone else, some other version of me who still had a body, still had a future. I wonder if the transport made it. I wonder if the children are safe now, somewhere far from that battlefield, sleeping soundly without knowing my name. I hope they are. I hope, more than anything else in that endless dark, that they are. Then, slowly, impossibly, something changes. A pressure, faint, at first, like the memory of touch, then warmth, spreading through whatever remains of me, gentle and insistent, pulling me towards something instead of away. The darkness does not vanish, but it begins to thin, like fog lifting at dawn, and through it, I begin to sense something I have not sensed in what feels like an eternity. Sound. Not the muffled, distant voices from before, but something closer now, clearer. A sound I recognize, though I cannot place why. A soft, broken sound, rising and falling in a rhythm that feels achingly familiar, though it is unlike any voice I have heard before. Someone is crying. The sound tugs at something deep inside me, a thread connecting whatever I have become to whatever I once was. I do not know who is crying, or why, or how I can hear it at all when I have no ears, no body, nothing left of the man who flew that ship into the dark. But I follow the sound anyway, drawn toward it the way a drowning man is drawn toward the surface, desperate and instinctive. The warmth grows stronger, the darkness grows thinner, and somewhere, impossibly, I feel the first flicker of something I thought I had lost forever. I feel my own heartbeat. It is faint at first, a single beat, then silence, then another. But it is there, undeniable, proof that whatever I have become is not entirely gone. Pain follows the heartbeat, sharp and sudden, flooding through limbs I did not know I still had. My chest burns, my head throbs, every nerve in my body seems to wake at once, screaming with the shock of sensation after so long in that silent, weightless dark. I try to move, and something holds me still, gentle but firm, hands I cannot yet see resting against my shoulders. The crying grows louder, closer, and beneath it I hear words now, though I cannot understand them, a language unlike anything I have ever heard, soft and musical, filled with sounds that rise and fall like a song. The voice trembles with emotion, thick with something I recognize instantly despite the strange words wrapped around it. Grief. Whoever is crying beside me is grieving, deeply and honestly, and some distant part of my mind wonders, with growing confusion, who could possibly be mourning a stranger they should never have found floating alone in the wreckage of a battle they were not even part of. I force my eyes open. Light floods in, blinding and sharp, and I flinch, turning my head away instinctively. Slowly, painfully, my vision begins to clear, shapes resolving out of the brightness, and the first thing I see, The very first thing is not a hospital ceiling, not the familiar faces of my squadron, not my mother's porch back on Earth. It is her. She is leaning over me, close enough that I can see every detail of a face unlike any I have ever seen before, and yet somehow, impossibly, beautiful in a way that stops the breath in my throat. Her skin carries a faint, pale blue tone, smooth and unmarked, catching the light like polished stone. Her eyes are large, a deep violet color, wide with shock, and shining with tears that spill freely down her cheeks. Her hair, dark and long, falls loose around her shoulders, tangled from what looks like hours of restless waiting. She wears clothing unlike anything I have ever seen, layers of fine, flowing fabric in deep colors, edged with patterns that seem to shift and shimmer faintly in the light, and around her neck hangs a delicate chain set with a stone that pulses softly, almost like a heartbeat of its own. Everything about her, from her clothing to the way others in the room seem to hold themselves at a respectful distance, tells me one undeniable thing. She is not ordinary. She is someone of great importance. Her hands are pressed against my chest, as though she had been holding on to me, holding me here, refusing to let me slip back into that silent dark. When my eyes finally focus on her face, when she realizes that I am truly looking back at her, truly awake, her breath catches in a small, broken gasp. For a long moment, neither of us moves, neither of us speaks. We simply stare at each other, two strangers from worlds that should never have touched, connected now by something neither of us fully understands. Then, slowly, carefully, she reaches out and brushes trembling fingers against my cheek, as though she needs to feel proof that I am truly here, truly alive, truly real. Her tears fall faster, but her lips curve into the smallest, most fragile smile I have ever seen. She whispers something in that strange musical language, soft and broken, and though I cannot understand the words, I understand, without any doubt, exactly what she means. She is saying thank you. I do not know where I am. I do not know who she is, or why an alien woman who should be my enemy is looking at me with such raw, unguarded relief. I do not know how I survived the destruction of my ship, or how I came to be lying here, alive, beneath her tear-filled eyes. But as the pain in my body fades into a dull, distant ache, and as her hand remains gently resting against my face, one truth settles over me with absolute certainty. I thought I had died, and somehow, impossibly, I had not. The room around me slowly comes into focus, and with it comes a wave of quiet panic that I try hard to control. This is not a human hospital. The walls curve in ways no human architect would design, smooth and seamless, glowing faintly with a soft blue light that seems to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Strange instruments hover near the bed I am lying on, controlled by no visible hands, adjusting themselves silently as though reading my body and responding to it directly. I try to sit up, and pain lances through my ribs, sharp enough to steal the breath from my lungs. A firm hand presses gently against my shoulder, guiding me back down. It is her again, the woman with the violet eyes, though her tears have slowed now, replaced by a careful, watchful calm. She says something soft, clearly meant to comfort me, though I understand none of it. Around the room, others move with quiet efficiency, tall, pale blue figures in fitted uniforms, their movements precise and controlled, though I notice the way several of them glance toward the woman beside me, then toward me, with expressions I cannot quite read. Caution, perhaps, or suspicion. One figure near the door, broader than the others, dressed in dark armor with intricate markings along the shoulders, watches me the way a soldier watches a threat that has not yet been neutralized. I understand, in that moment, with growing dread, exactly where I am. I am aboard an enemy ship. The realization should terrify me, and part of me is terrified, but another part, a quieter part, cannot ignore the strangeness of the situation. If I am truly a prisoner, why does this woman look at me with such open relief instead of triumph? Why did she cry over my survival instead of celebrating my capture? None of it makes sense, and the confusion tangles uncomfortably with the pain still throbbing through my body. A new figure enters the room, older, with silver streaks through dark hair pulled back in a severe style, wearing robes far more elaborate than anyone else present. The moment this figure speaks, every other person in the room straightens, falling into careful, respectful postures. Even the armored guard near the door bows his head slightly. The woman beside me turns, and for the first time since I woke, I see something other than grief and relief cross her face. I see fear. The two of them exchange words in that same musical language, quick and tense, and though I cannot understand a single syllable, I understand the tone perfectly. This is an argument, careful and controlled, the kind held between people who cannot afford to raise their voices even when they desperately want to. The older figure gestures toward me sharply, and the woman steps slightly in front of the bed, as though shielding me with her own body. My pulse quickens. Whatever they are discussing, it clearly concerns my fate, and I am helpless to understand or influence any of it. Finally, the older figure exhales, a long, controlled breath, and says something final, something that makes the woman's shoulders sag with visible relief. The older figure turns and leaves the room without another glance in my direction, the armored guard following close behind, though he pauses at the door to look back at me one final time before disappearing into the corridor beyond. The woman turns back to me, and though tension still lingers in her posture, something softer returns to her expression. She reaches toward a small device resting on a nearby table, something no larger than a coin, and presses it gently against the side of my neck. A strange tingling sensation spreads through my skin, followed by a faint hum that seems to settle somewhere behind my ears. She steps back, watching me carefully, and speaks again. This time, though her mouth still moves in that unfamiliar language, words form in my mind, clear and understandable, layered strangely over the sounds I cannot decipher. Can you understand me now? I stare at her, stunned into silence for a long moment, before I manage a hoarse response. Yes, I can understand you. Relief floods across her face, and for a moment, I think she might cry again, though this time, from something closer to joy. I was afraid the translator would not work properly. Your physiology is different from anything we have studied before. Where am I? I ask, my voice rough and unfamiliar even to my own ears. What happened to me? She hesitates, glancing briefly toward the door before answering. You are aboard the royal vessel Thessaly, flagship of the Korath fleet. As for what happened, she pauses again, choosing her words carefully. You should not be alive. Your ship was destroyed in the battle above Halden's Reach. We found you drifting in the wreckage, your vital signs nearly gone. It took hours of work to stabilize you. The mention of the battle brings the memories rushing back, sharp and vivid. The mothership, the seam in its hull, the transport jumping to safety. The evacuation transport, I say quickly, ignoring the pain that flares through my chest as I push myself up slightly. Did it escape? Did the people aboard survive? Something flickers across her face, something complicated that I cannot immediately identify. Yes, she says softly. The transport escaped safely. Your actions ensured that. Relief washes over me, so intense that for a moment I forget the strangeness of my situation entirely. The children survived. The families survived. Whatever happens to me now, that much matters more than anything else. Good, I whisper, sinking back against the bed. That's good. She watches me with an expression of quiet wonder, as though my reaction surprises her deeply. You nearly died to save people you had never met. People from a species not even your own, aboard that transport. I blink at her, confused by the observation. They were still people, still innocent. It didn't matter that I didn't know them. Her eyes shine with something I cannot name, something between disbelief and profound respect. Among my people, she says slowly, such sacrifice for strangers is rare, especially among warriors. I study her for a long moment, my mind slowly working through everything that has happened, everything that still does not make sense. Who are you? I finally ask. Why did you save me? Why were you crying? She straightens slightly, and something in her posture shifts, becoming more formal, more composed, though the warmth in her eyes remains. My name is Aveline Thessari. I am the eldest daughter of Emperor Corvain Thessari, ruler of the Korath Empire. The words hit me like a physical blow. A princess. I am lying in a medical bay aboard an enemy warship, being cared for personally by an alien princess, the daughter of the very ruler my people have been fighting against for years. Your royalty, I say slowly, struggling to process the implications. And I'm your enemy. Something pained crosses her face at those words. You were flying under enemy colors, yes, but what I witnessed in that battle was not the action of an enemy. It was the action of someone willing to die so that innocence could live. That is not something I can simply dismiss because of the uniform you wear. Still doesn't explain why you were crying, I press gently, genuinely curious despite the danger of my situation. Or why you fought to save my life instead of letting me die. Aveline is quiet for a long moment, her gaze drifting toward the window across the room, where distant stars glimmer against the black expanse of space. When she finally speaks again, her voice is quieter, more vulnerable than before. There is more to what happened at Halden's Reach than you understand, she says softly. More than even my own people fully know. What you destroyed with your sacrifice, it was not simply a weapon array. She turns back to face me, her violet eyes filled with something heavy and complicated. It was going to be used against my own people as well. Against civilians of my own empire who oppose my father's continued war. I stare at her, stunned into silence. Your father was planning to attack his own people? Not directly, she says carefully, but the weapon you destroyed was never meant only for your evacuation transport. It was a testing ground, a demonstration of force meant to silence dissent within my own empire, dissent that I have quietly supported for years. Her hands tighten slightly at her sides. If that weapon had been used successfully against your people, it would have been turned next against those who oppose this war among my own kind, against people I care for deeply, perhaps, eventually, against me. The weight of her words settles slowly over me, reshaping everything I thought I understood about this conflict, about her, about the strange twist of fate that brought us together in this quiet medical bay. You're saying I saved your life too, I say slowly, without even knowing it. Tears well in her eyes once more, though she blinks them back with visible effort. You saved more lives than you will ever fully know, Ryan Colt. Human and Korath alike. That is why I could not simply let you die. That is why I fought for your survival, even against those within my own court who believe you should have been left to perish, or worse, interrogated and discarded once useful information was extracted. Her honesty stuns me, and for the first time since waking in this strange place, I feel something other than confusion and fear. I feel a fragile, tentative sense of connection, forming across the vast divide between our two peoples, born from grief and sacrifice, and an unlikely shared understanding. Thank you, I say quietly, for saving me, for telling me the truth. Aveline offers a small, tired smile, though shadows of worry still linger behind her eyes. You are not safe yet, she warns gently. Many aboard this ship, and within my father's court, would see you as nothing more than a weapon or a threat. I will do everything within my power to protect you, but you must be careful. Trust carefully. Speak carefully. I nod slowly, absorbing the weight of her warning. What happens now? She glances once more toward the door, where the shadow of the armored guard still lingers faintly in the corridor beyond. Now, she says softly, you rest and heal. And then, Ryan Colt, we determine together how a human soldier and a Korath princess move forward from here, in a galaxy that has never seen anything quite like this before. Outside the window, the stars stretch on endlessly, indifferent to the fragile alliance forming quietly within this small room. I do not know what the coming days will bring, what dangers wait in the shadows of this unfamiliar ship, or how deeply I have already become entangled in a conflict far larger than the battle that nearly ended my life. But as Aveline settles into a chair beside my bed, her gaze steady and resolved despite the exhaustion etched into her features. I understand one thing with absolute clarity. Whatever happens next, I am no longer simply a soldier who nearly died in battle. I am something else now, something new, and there is no going back to the life I had before. 3 days pass before I am strong enough to walk without support, and in that time, I learn more about the Korath Empire than I ever imagined possible. Aveline visits often, sometimes alone, sometimes with a quiet attendant named Doran who watches me with wary eyes but says little. She brings me food I cannot identify, textures and flavors unlike anything from home, and though my stomach protests at first, I force myself to eat, knowing I will need my strength for whatever comes next. It is during one of these visits, on the 3rd day, that the door to my room slides open without warning, and the armored guard from before steps inside, followed by 2 others dressed in similar dark uniforms. Aveline rises immediately from her chair, her posture shifting into something guarded and formal. "General Draxus," she says, her voice carefully controlled. "This is a medical bay. I was not informed of an inspection." The general, a broad-shouldered figure with a scar running down one side of his face, regards me with cold, calculating eyes. "The prisoner has recovered enough to be questioned, Your Highness. Command wishes to know what he can tell us about human fleet movements, weapon capabilities, defensive positions." "He is not a prisoner of war in the traditional sense," Aveline says quickly. "He saved lives. Our lives, General, though you have chosen to ignore that fact." Draxus's expression does not soften. "He is a human soldier aboard a Korath vessel, Princess. Whatever noble motivations you wish to assign to his actions, the fact remains that he possesses information valuable to the war effort. Information your father has specifically requested." The mention of the Emperor sends a visible ripple of tension through Aveline's posture. She glances at me, and I see the silent apology in her eyes before she turns back to the general. "I will accompany the questioning." "That will not be necessary," Draxus says flatly. "This matter falls under military jurisdiction, not palace affairs." "He is under my protection," Aveline says, and for the first time I hear real steel in her voice, the tone of someone accustomed to being obeyed despite her youth. "I saved his life personally. I will not have him interrogated without oversight." The 2 soldiers accompanying Draxus exchange uncertain glances, clearly caught between their orders and the authority of a princess. Draxus's jaw tightens, but after a long, tense moment, he inclines his head slightly. "Very well, you may observe, but the questioning proceeds as ordered." They move me to a different room, sparse and cold, with a single chair bolted to the floor and harsh lighting that makes my eyes ache after days in the softer glow of the medical bay. Draxus sits across from me, his expression unreadable, while Aveline stands near the wall, arms crossed, her gaze fixed on the general with quiet, watchful defiance. "Your name," Draxus begins, his tone clipped and businesslike. "Ryan Colt," I answer, deciding honesty about basic facts poses little risk. "Pilot, Human Defense Fleet." "Your rank and unit assignment." I hesitate, weighing the request carefully. Some information feels harmless enough to share. Other information could endanger people I have sworn to protect. I'd rather not discuss military specifics, I say carefully. "I think you understand why." Draxus's eyes narrow slightly. "You are in no position to withhold information, Colt. Cooperation would serve you well." "I understand that," I reply, keeping my voice steady despite the fear tightening in my chest. "But I also understand that giving you tactical information could get people I care about killed. I won't do that. Not for anyone." A tense silence stretches between us. Draxus studies me with an expression I cannot quite decipher, something between frustration and, strangely, a flicker of grudging respect. "Your loyalty to your people is admirable," he finally says. "Misguided, given your current circumstances, but admirable nonetheless." "It's not misguided," I say firmly. "It's just loyalty. I imagine you'd do the same if our positions were reversed." Something shifts subtly in the general's expression, and for a brief moment, The hostility in his eyes softens just slightly. Perhaps, he admits quietly, perhaps I would. Aveline steps forward then, seizing the opening. General, if I may. Rather than pressing for tactical information he clearly will not provide, perhaps there is another approach. Draxus turns toward her, one eyebrow raised in question. The Empire has long sought to understand human resilience, Aveline continues carefully. Our scholars have theories, but little direct insight. Colt's willingness to sacrifice himself for strangers, his continued refusal to betray his people even under pressure, these things tell us more about human character than any tactical map ever could. I watch this exchange with growing understanding. Aveline is not merely protecting me out of gratitude, she is carefully redirecting the conversation, steering it away from dangerous territory and towards something safer, something that serves a purpose without compromising my values or my people's safety. Draxus considers this for a long moment, his gaze shifting between the two of us. You suggest we study him instead of interrogate him. I suggest, Aveline says carefully, that understanding often yields more valuable results than force. My father has expressed interest in understanding what makes humanity such a persistent adversary despite overwhelming odds. Perhaps Colt can provide insight into that question without compromising operational secrets. After a long considering silence, Draxus finally nods, though reluctance remains evident in his posture. I will relay this suggestion to the Emperor. For now, the prisoner returns to medical observation. He rises from his chair, fixing me with one final, measuring look before turning toward the door. You are fortunate, Colt, that the princess holds such faith in your character. Do not give either of us reason to regret this leniency. He departs, his soldiers following close behind, and the moment the door slides shut, Aveline exhales a long, shaky breath, some of the careful composure she maintained throughout the interrogation finally cracking. That was too close, she admits quietly, moving to help me back to my feet. Draxus answers directly to my father. If he had pressed harder, I could not have protected you. Thank you, I say sincerely, for stepping in, for finding another way. She meets my eyes, and something passes between us, an unspoken understanding forged in that tense, dangerous moment. I meant what I said to him. Your character, Ryan Colt, is unlike anything our scholars have documented about your species. Most reports paint humans as reckless, aggressive, driven purely by survival instinct. But what I witnessed in that battle, and what I just witnessed in that room, speaks to something far more complex. We're not so different from your people, I think, I say quietly, as she helps guide me back toward the medical bay. We just want to protect the people we love. Doesn't matter what species you are. That instinct feels pretty universal. Aveline is quiet for a moment, considering my words carefully. Perhaps that is precisely what my father and his advisors fail to understand, she says softly. They see humanity as an obstacle to be eliminated, a threat to be neutralized. But if what you say is true, if the same instincts that drive my people also drive yours, then perhaps this war is built on a foundation far more fragile than anyone realizes. We walk in silence for a while after that, her words settling heavily between us. As we approach the medical bay, she pauses outside the door, turning to face me with an expression of quiet determination. I want to show you something, she says. Tomorrow, if you are strong enough. Something that might help you understand why I fight so hard to protect you, beyond simple gratitude for what you did at Halden's Reach. What is it? I ask, curiosity overriding my exhaustion. Patience, she says, though a small, genuine smile touches her lips for the first time since the tense interrogation ended. Rest tonight. Tomorrow, I will show you the truth behind this war, and perhaps, together, we can begin to imagine an end to it that does not require more sacrifice like yours. That night, alone in the quiet medical bay, I lie awake staring at the unfamiliar ceiling, turning over everything I have learned since waking aboard this ship. A princess who defies her own general to protect an enemy soldier, a weapon meant to silence her own people, a war built, perhaps, on assumptions and fears that neither side has fully examined. I think about my squadron, gone now, and the transport full of survivors who owe their lives to a choice I made without hesitation. I think about Aveline's tears, the first thing I saw upon waking, and how strange it feels that an alien princess's grief became the thread that pulled me back from the edge of death. Somewhere beyond this ship, the war continues, indifferent to the fragile connection forming within these walls. But for the first time since I opened my eyes in this unfamiliar place, I feel something beyond fear and confusion. I feel hope. Tomorrow, Aveline promises to show me the truth behind everything, and though I do not yet know what that truth will reveal, I find myself trusting her, trusting this strange, unlikely bond we have formed across the vast divide between our two peoples. Whatever waits for me beyond this room, I no longer face it entirely alone. Morning arrives. Though aboard a starship, the concept feels strange, marked only by a subtle brightening of the ambient lighting and the gentle chime that signals a shift change somewhere in the corridors beyond my room. Aveline arrives shortly after, dressed more simply than before, her elaborate court robes replaced with practical clothing better suited for movement. "Are you strong enough to walk some distance?" she asks, studying me with a healer's careful assessment. "I think so," I say, testing my legs as I rise from the bed. The pain has faded to a dull, manageable ache, and whatever medical technology the Korath possess, it has clearly accelerated my healing far beyond what human medicine could achieve in the same time frame. "Where are we going?" "You will see," she says simply, gesturing for me to follow. We move through corridors I have not yet seen, past crew members who pause and stare openly at the sight of a human walking freely alongside their princess. Whispers follow us, though Aveline pays them no mind, her posture radiating quiet authority despite her casual attire. Eventually, we reach a section of the ship unlike anything I have encountered so far, a wide, circular chamber with walls that seem to shift and shimmer with recorded images, historical records perhaps, displayed in that same musical language I still cannot read. At the center of the chamber stands a raised platform, and upon it, a large three-dimensional projection slowly rotates, depicting what appears to be a planet, lush and green, remarkably similar to images of Earth I have seen in briefings. "This is Korathia," Aveline explains, stepping onto the platform beside the projection. "Our homeworld. Before the war began." The image shifts, and I watch as the peaceful landscape transforms, cities rising, technology advancing, until finally, the image darkens, replaced by scenes of conflict, destruction, families fleeing burning buildings. 15 years ago, Aveline continues, her voice heavy with old grief, my people made first contact with humanity. It should have been a moment of wonder, two advanced civilizations meeting for the first time. Instead, misunderstanding bred fear, and fear bred violence. Neither side fully understands, even now, exactly how the first shots were fired, but once blood was spilled, peace became impossible to reclaim. I was young when the war started, I say quietly, watching the projection shift again, now showing battles I recognize from history lessons, though seen from a perspective I never imagined possible. My generation grew up believing your people were simply monsters, conquerors bent on destroying everything we built. And my generation, Aveline says softly, grew up believing the same of yours. Savage, unpredictable, driven by chaos rather than reason. She pauses, meeting my eyes with quiet intensity. Yet here you stand, having sacrificed everything to save strangers, human and Korath alike. That is not the behavior of a savage, Ryan Colt. The projection shifts once more, and my breath catches as I recognize the scene now displayed, the battle above Halden's Reach, viewed from the perspective of the Korath fleet. I watch my own ship, small and fragile against the massive mothership, weaving through defensive fire with a precision that even now seems impossible. My father ordered that weapon built in secret, Aveline continues, her voice tightening with barely restrained anger. Officially, it was designed to end the war quickly, to force human surrender through overwhelming force. But I discovered, through channels I dare not reveal even now, that its true purpose extended further. Once demonstrated against your people, it would have been turned inward, against Korath citizens who have grown weary of endless war, who have begun openly questioning my father's leadership. He was planning to use it against his own people, I say slowly, the full weight of her earlier revelation settling more completely now that I see the evidence laid out before me. Against dissidents, Aveline confirms grimly, against anyone who threatens his continued grip on power. I have spent years quietly working against him, gathering allies within the court who share my belief that this war serves no one but those who profit from its continuation. But I lacked proof substantial enough to move against him openly, until your sacrifice destroyed the weapon before it could be used against either of our peoples. I stare at the projection, at the frozen image of my ship's final, desperate maneuver, and feel the true scope of what happened at Halden's Reach settling over me. I didn't just save that transport, I say quietly. I saved your entire opposition movement. Everyone who might have stood against your father. Yes, Aveline says simply, which is precisely why certain factions within this ship, within the Empire itself, would see you eliminated the moment they fully understand what you represent. You are not merely a human soldier to them, Ryan Colt. You are proof of my father's plans against his own people, a living witness to a truth he would prefer remain buried. The danger of my situation crystallizes with sudden, sharp clarity. I am not simply a prisoner of war caught in unfortunate circumstances. I am a threat to the most powerful figure in an entire empire, protected only by the fragile authority of a princess whose own position grows more precarious with each passing day. Why show me this? I ask, studying her carefully. You could have kept this hidden, kept me ignorant and safer, in a way. Aveline steps down from the platform, moving closer, her expression earnest and open. Because I believe, Ryan Colt, that you and I have been given an opportunity rarely granted to anyone caught within the machinery of war. A chance to see beyond the labels our people have assigned each other, enemy and ally, human and Korath. I believe, if given the chance, we might accomplish something neither of our governments has managed in 15 years of fighting. Peace, I say softly, understanding dawning. Peace, she confirms. Or at the very least, the beginning of understanding that might eventually lead there, but it will require courage from both of us, and considerable risk. Before I can respond, the chamber doors slide open abruptly, and Doran, Aveline's quiet attendant, rushes in, his expression tight with urgency. "Princess, forgive the intrusion," he says quickly, bowing briefly before continuing. "General Draxus has summoned an emergency council session. Word has reached the Emperor regarding the destroyed weapon platform. He suspects sabotage, and there are those within the council pushing for immediate execution of the human prisoner as a precautionary measure." Aveline's face pales, but her composure remains remarkably steady despite the alarming news. "When does the council convene?" "Within the hour, Your Highness." She turns to me, her expression fierce with determination. "I will not allow this, but I need you to trust me completely, Ryan Colt. Whatever happens in that council chamber, whatever accusations are leveled, you must remain calm and let me handle the political maneuvering. Can you do that?" I meet her gaze, drawing strength from her unwavering resolve, despite the fear tightening in my own chest. "I trust you," I say firmly. "Whatever you need me to do, I'm ready." She nods once, sharp and decisive, before turning to Doran. "Prepare him appropriately. If he is to stand before the council, he will do so with dignity, not as a cowering prisoner, but as someone who saved lives at great personal cost." Doran bows again and gestures for me to follow, leading me through another series of corridors toward what I assume must be quarters, where I might be properly prepared for the confrontation ahead. As we walk, my mind races through everything Aveline has revealed: the weapon, her father's true intentions, the fragile alliance we have begun building against overwhelming odds. I think of the interrogation with General Draxus, the way Aveline skillfully redirected the conversation to protect me. I think of her tears when I first woke, the raw grief that seemed impossible for a stranger to feel over another stranger's near death. Everything makes sense now in a way it did not before. She was not simply grateful for my sacrifice. She recognized, immediately, the profound implications of what I had accomplished, and the danger that recognition placed upon both of us. Doran leads me to a small chamber where he provides clothing more befitting a formal council appearance. Dark fabric similar to what I have seen other officers wear, though clearly adjusted to accommodate my human frame. As he helps me dress, I notice his hands trembling slightly, betraying nerves he otherwise hides well. "You're worried," I observe quietly. He hesitates before answering, glancing toward the door as though checking for eavesdroppers. "The princess has taken considerable risk in protecting you," he finally admits. Risk that extends beyond simple political maneuvering. If the emperor discovers the full extent of what she has done, what she knows, the consequences could be severe, not merely for you, but for her as well. The weight of that warning settles heavily over me. Aveline is risking everything, her position, perhaps even her safety, to protect a stranger from an enemy species, all because she believes in something larger than the war that has defined both our lives. I won't let her sacrifice fall to waste, I say firmly, more to myself than to Doran. Whatever happens in that council, I'll do everything I can to make sure her risk means something. Doran studies me for a long moment, something shifting subtly in his cautious expression. "Perhaps," he says slowly, "the princess's faith in humanity is not entirely misplaced after all." We finish preparations in silence, and as Doran leads me toward the council chamber, I steady my breathing, preparing myself for whatever confrontation awaits. Whatever happens within those walls, I understand now with absolute clarity that the stakes extend far beyond my own survival. The future of an entire empire, and perhaps the possibility of ending a war that has consumed 15 years of bloodshed, may well depend on what happens in the next few crucial minutes. We arrive at massive double doors, guarded by 2 armored soldiers who step aside upon recognizing Doran's authority. Beyond those doors, I can hear the low murmur of assembled voices, the sound of a council already gathering, already debating my fate before I have even set foot inside. Doran meets my eyes one final time, offering a small, encouraging nod. "Courage, human," he says quietly. "The princess believes in you. Perhaps it is time you believed in yourself as well." The doors begin to open, revealing a vast chamber filled with Korath nobility and military officers, their eyes turning toward me with expressions ranging from curiosity to open hostility. At the center of the chamber, seated upon an elevated throne, sits a figure whose presence immediately commands the entire room's attention. Emperor Corvain Thessari has arrived, and judging by the cold fury etched across his features, he has already decided exactly what fate he believes I deserve. The chamber falls silent as Doran guides me forward, every eye tracking my movement with a mixture of fascination and suspicion. Aveline stands near the base of the throne, her posture rigid, though her eyes flicker toward me with a silent message of reassurance the moment I enter her line of sight. "So," the Emperor says, his voice carrying easily across the vast chamber, without need for amplification, "this is the human responsible for destroying 15 years of careful planning." I stop several paces before the throne, forcing myself to meet his gaze directly, despite every instinct urging me to look away. "I destroyed a weapon platform that would have killed thousands of innocent people, Your Majesty, human and Korath alike." A murmur ripples through the assembled council at my directness. The Emperor's eyes narrow slightly, though something like grudging interest flickers behind the anger. "You speak boldly for a prisoner facing execution." "I speak honestly," I reply, keeping my voice steady despite the fear coiling tight in my chest. "I've already accepted that I might die today, but I won't stand here and pretend I regret what I did." General Draxus steps forward from among the assembled officers, his expression carefully neutral despite the tension crackling through the room. "Your Majesty, the human's actions, whatever his intentions, resulted in significant strategic losses. The council recommends immediate execution as both punishment and deterrent against future incursions. A reasonable recommendation, the Emperor says slowly, were the full truth of the matter not considerably more complicated. His gaze shifts pointedly toward Avalon, and I watch her shoulders tense beneath the weight of his scrutiny. My daughter, it seems, has taken considerable interest in this human's welfare. Perhaps she might illuminate the council on precisely why. Aveline steps forward, her composure remarkable despite the obvious danger of the moment. Father, the weapon platform destroyed at Halden's Reach was never sanctioned through proper council channels. Its true purpose extended beyond military application against human forces. A tense silence grips the chamber. The Emperor's expression remains carefully controlled, though something flickers behind his eyes, a warning perhaps, or genuine surprise at his daughter's boldness. "You accuse your own father of deception before this entire council," he says quietly, dangerously. "I present evidence," Aveline counters, her voice steady despite the obvious risk. "Evidence that the weapon was designed with capabilities extending well beyond its stated purpose, capabilities that would have allowed its use against Korath citizens who oppose continued escalation of this war." Gasps and murmurs erupt throughout the chamber, officers and nobility exchanging alarmed glances. General Draxus's expression shifts from neutral confusion to something sharper, more calculating, as he processes the implications of Avaline's accusation. "These are serious claims," the Emperor says, his voice carrying an edge of warning that silences the murmuring instantly. "Claims that require substantial proof, Aveline. Proof I have yet to see presented. The proof exists in the weapon's original technical specifications," Aveline says firmly. "Documents I have secured copies of through channels I will not disclose in open council. Specifications that reveal targeting capabilities calibrated specifically for use against unshielded civilian population centers, capabilities entirely unnecessary for military engagement against fortified human positions." The Emperor's expression darkens further, though whether from anger at being exposed or fury at his daughter's defiance, I cannot determine. "And you believe this human's destruction of the weapon serves some noble purpose, rather than simply representing fortunate happenstance for an enemy combatant?" "I believe," Aveline says, turning slightly to meet my eyes before continuing, "that Ryan Colt's actions, whatever his original intentions, prevented a tragedy that would have stained this empire's honor beyond redemption. I believe continuing this war, built increasingly on deception and internal oppression rather than legitimate defense, serves no one but those who profit from its continuation." The Emperor rises slowly from his throne, and the entire chamber seems to hold its breath collectively as he descends the steps toward where Aveline and I stand. "You suggest," he says, his voice low and dangerous, "that I have betrayed my own people for the sake of maintaining power." "I suggest," Aveline replies, holding her ground despite the Emperor's imposing presence looming closer, "that this war has continued far longer than necessary, at tremendous cost to both our peoples, and that perhaps it is time we consider what genuine peace might require, rather than continuing down a path that serves only those unwilling to relinquish control." For a long tense moment, silence grips the chamber entirely. The Emperor studies his daughter with an unreadable expression, something complex passing behind his eyes that I cannot fully interpret. Finally, his gaze shifts toward me, cold and calculating. "And you, human," he says slowly, "what would you have me believe? That your sacrifice at Halden's Reach was born of some grand vision for peace between our species rather than simple military necessity?" I take a steadying breath, choosing my words with careful deliberation. "Your Majesty, I won't pretend I understood the full implications of what I destroyed when I made that choice. I acted to save innocent lives aboard that transport, nothing more calculated than that. But since waking aboard this ship, I've learned things about this war, about the circumstances that started it, that make me believe both our peoples have been fighting based on fear and misunderstanding rather than any genuine, irreconcilable conflict." Bold words from someone whose life currently rests entirely within my judgment, the Emperor observes, though something in his tone has shifted subtly, less immediately hostile than before. Perhaps, I acknowledge. But I'd rather speak honestly and face whatever consequences follow than pretend loyalty to a peace I don't actually believe exists yet. The Emperor studies me for a long, considering moment, and I force myself to remain still under his scrutiny, refusing to betray the fear churning beneath my carefully maintained composure. Finally, he turns back toward the assembled council, his expression thoughtful rather than immediately decisive. This council finds itself facing a situation without clear precedent, he announces, his voice carrying renewed authority. A human soldier, who sacrificed himself to save Korath, lives alongside human ones. A weapon platform whose true purpose apparently extended beyond stated military necessity. And accusations, serious accusations, leveled by my own daughter against the very foundation of this war's continuation. He pauses, glancing briefly toward General Draxus before continuing. General, you will personally oversee a full investigation into the weapon platform's original specifications and intended deployment parameters. If Princess Aveline's claims prove accurate, those responsible for exceeding sanctioned military application will face appropriate consequences, regardless of rank or position. Draxus bows deeply, though I catch a flicker of something complicated crossing his features, perhaps relief, perhaps calculation regarding his own potential involvement in whatever conspiracy Aveline has uncovered. As you command, Your Majesty. The Emperor turns back toward me, and though his expression remains carefully guarded, something has shifted in his bearing, a grudging consideration replacing the outright hostility from before. As for you, human cult, I find myself unable to justify immediate execution given the circumstances now presented before this council. However, neither can I simply release an enemy combatant without appropriate caution. What are you proposing, Father? Aveline asks, tension still evident in her voice despite the apparent shift in the Emperor's demeanor. A period of continued observation, the Emperor says slowly. Under your direct supervision, Aveline, given your evident investment in this matter, Colt will remain aboard this vessel, granted limited freedoms befitting someone who saved Korath lives, while this council determines appropriate long-term resolution regarding his status and the broader implications of what has been revealed today. Relief floods through me, though I recognize immediately that this represents only a temporary reprieve rather than genuine resolution. The war continues beyond these chamber walls, and whatever conspiracy Aveline has uncovered regarding the weapon platform's true purpose remains far from fully resolved. Thank you, Your Majesty, I say carefully, bowing my head slightly in a gesture of respect I hope translates appropriately across our cultural divide. The Emperor studies me a moment longer before turning and ascending back toward his throne, the council session apparently concluding with this decision. As the assembled nobility and officers begin dispersing, quiet conversations erupting throughout the chamber regarding the dramatic revelations just witnessed, Aveline moves quickly to my side, her relief evident despite her continued careful composure. That was closer than I anticipated, she admits quietly, as we begin making our way from the chamber. My father's reaction was unexpected. I feared he would dismiss my accusations outright, given the political risk they represent to his authority. Maybe he's more reasonable than you gave him credit for, I suggest, though uncertainty colors my own assessment of the tense confrontation we just survived. Perhaps, Aveline says, though skepticism remains evident in her tone. Or perhaps he simply recognizes the political danger of dismissing evidence too readily, particularly with General Draxus and others now aware of the accusations. Regardless, we have gained time, Ryan Colt, time to investigate further, to build stronger alliances among those within the court who share our vision for genuine peace. As we walk together through the corridors, the weight of everything that has happened settles heavily over me. I came aboard this ship believing myself dead, only to discover an entire web of political intrigue, hidden conspiracies, and the fragile beginnings of an alliance that might reshape the course of a war that has raged for 15 years. Over the following weeks, that fragile alliance grows stronger. I work alongside Aveline and a small, carefully selected group of allies within the Korath court, individuals who share her vision for ending the war through genuine understanding rather than continued bloodshed. My knowledge of human technology and tactics, shared carefully and without compromising sensitive military secrets, helps resolve several technical challenges that had long puzzled Korath engineers, further demonstrating the value of cooperation over continued conflict. General Draxus's investigation into the weapon platform's true specifications ultimately confirms Aveline's accusations, revealing a conspiracy involving several high-ranking officials who had hoped to use the weapon to consolidate power under the guise of ending the war through overwhelming force. The revelation sends shockwaves through the Korath political landscape, weakening the faction that had long pushed for continued escalation. Throughout it all, my bond with Aveline deepens, forged through shared risk and mutual respect that transcends the vast differences between our two species. She teaches me about Korath culture, history, and philosophy, while I share stories of Earth, of humanity's own complicated history of conflict and eventual reconciliation between nations that once seemed irreconcilably divided. Then, nearly 2 months after I first opened my eyes to find her crying beside me, everything changes once more. Word arrives that a faction of hardline military officers, furious over the growing momentum toward peace negotiations and the exposure of the weapon conspiracy, has moved to seize control of a strategic outpost near the human border, intending to reignite full-scale conflict before any formal ceasefire can be established. Among the officers named in the uprising is someone I never expected, someone whose betrayal cuts deeper than any other revelation throughout this entire ordeal. Doran, Aveline's trusted attendant, the very person who prepared me for that fateful council session, has been secretly coordinating with the hardline faction, feeding them information about our growing alliance and the peace negotiations progressing quietly behind the scenes. I trusted him completely, Aveline says, her voice tight with barely controlled anger and hurt, as we review the intelligence reports confirming Doran's betrayal. He had access to everything, our plans, our allies, even the location of the evidence proving the weapon conspiracy. We need to move quickly, I say, studying the tactical display showing the outpost's location, dangerously close to human territory. If they seize control of that outpost and launch an attack, it could shatter any hope of peace negotiations before they even properly begin. Aveline nods grimly, determination replacing the hurt in her expression. My father has authorized a response force, but the hardline faction has significant support among certain military units. This will not be a simple matter of arresting a few rogue officers. Then we'll need to be smarter than they are, I say, already formulating a plan drawing on both human tactical knowledge and Aveline's intimate understanding of Korath military protocols. If we can reach the outpost before they fully consolidate control, we might be able to resolve this without triggering the full-scale conflict they're hoping to provoke. We assemble a small strike team, carefully selected individuals whose loyalty to the peace effort has been thoroughly verified, and depart aboard a swift Korath vessel toward the contested outpost. Throughout the tense journey, Aveline and I refine our approach, drawing on every scrap of knowledge and experience gained throughout our unlikely partnership. As we approach the outpost, tension coils tight through my chest, reminiscent of that final desperate battle above Halden's Reach that first brought Aveline and me together. But this time, I am not alone, facing overwhelming odds with nothing but a fragile hope of protecting strangers. This time, I fight alongside someone who has become far more than an unlikely ally. The confrontation at the outpost proves tense and dangerous. Hardline officers initially refusing to stand down despite Aveline's authority and the mounting evidence of their conspiracy's illegitimacy. But careful negotiation, backed by the credible threat of overwhelming response force and bolstered by growing support among moderate officers who have grown weary of endless war, eventually succeeds in preventing the worst outcome. The uprising collapses without triggering the catastrophic renewed conflict its instigators had hoped to provoke. Doran is apprehended among the captured conspirators, and in a private moment before his transport to formal judgment, He meets Aveline's eyes with something approaching genuine regret. "I believed I was protecting our people," he says quietly. "Protecting them from a peace I feared would prove nothing more than human deception, a prelude to eventual conquest, rather than genuine reconciliation." "And now?" Aveline asks, her voice carrying more sorrow than anger, despite his betrayal. Doran glances toward me before answering. "Now I am uncertain what I believe. Perhaps that uncertainty is precisely why I chose the path I did, rather than trusting in something I did not yet understand." As Doran is led away, Aveline turns to me, exhaustion and lingering grief evident in her expression, despite our success in preventing the crisis from escalating further. "This will not be the last challenge we face," she says quietly. "Peace built after 15 years of war does not come easily, or without continued sacrifice." "I know," I say, meeting her gaze steadily, "but I think we've proven something important today. That peace is possible, even after everything that's happened between our peoples." In the months that follow, formal negotiations between human and Koroth representatives finally begin, built upon the foundation Aveline and I helped establish through our unlikely partnership. The path toward lasting peace remains long and uncertain, filled with challenges neither of us can fully anticipate, but for the first time in 15 years, genuine hope exists where once only endless conflict seemed possible. I think often of that final desperate battle above Halden's Reach, of the moment I believed my life had ended amid the wreckage of my destroyed ship. I think of opening my eyes to find an alien princess crying beside me, her grief the first thing I witnessed upon returning from whatever quiet darkness had claimed me. I thought I had died that day. In many ways, perhaps the person I was before that battle truly did fade away, replaced by someone shaped by unlikely alliance, hard-won trust, and the discovery that even the deepest divides between peoples can be bridged when courage and honesty are given genuine chance to flourish. Aveline once told me that her tears that day were not born from simple gratitude, but from recognition of everything my sacrifice represented, everything it might yet become. Standing beside her now, watching as delegates from both our peoples work toward a peace once thought impossible, I understand at last the full weight of what those tears truly meant. Not an ending, but a beginning. Not death, but a strange, unexpected rebirth into a purpose far greater than anything I could have imagined when I first pushed my ship's throttle forward, prepared to sacrifice everything for strangers I would never know. The war is not yet over. Peace remains fragile, uncertain, still vulnerable to those who would see it fail. But as I stand beside Aveline, watching the stars stretch endlessly beyond the viewport, stars that once separated our two peoples through fear and misunderstanding, I feel something I never expected to feel again after that final, desperate battle. I feel hope for a future neither of us could have imagined before an alien princess's tears pulled me back from the edge of death and into a destiny far greater than either of us ever anticipated.